Greetings, my dear beloved children. Well, we have reached the point of summarizing my series of messages on telepathic communication, and today I would like to provide you with a classification of all its types. So, we will move from easy things to complex ones. The first type can be referred to as emotional interchange, when people exchange energies, with their information component being rather conditional. Thus, people not resonating with each other in terms of energy feel discontent or ill at ease, which they sometimes cannot explain by words. And on the contrary, people being at one vibration wave often enjoy communication with one another without any words, simply being by each other's side. The second type of telepathic communication can be referred to as information interchange. It happens when one person thought of the other one and the latter felt it. For example, one was about to call one friend and the latter was the first to call all of a sudden. It is also reflected in your language. Speak of angels and they flap their wings. The telepathy thing worked. In this case, there occurs the transmission of thoughts over distance without any particular emotional shade. The third one can be called information emotion type. Such communication occurs when one imparts emotions to one mental impulse to another person. For example, when one is worried about one family and asks them in thought to call or text. And if there are strong emotional bonds between these people, it is highly probable that they will feel this impulse and respond it. We will call the fourth one energy information type. This time it goes beyond the limits of the third dimension world and implies communication with the representatives of the subtle world. Besides, it can be both astral beings of all levels and light forces existing in higher dimensions. Such communication is typical of people with their subtle level information channel being opened. Depending on their level of vibrations, they start channeling energy information units from the beings they are resonating with at this moment. That is, they are at the same vibration frequency with. And here really a lot depends on the emotional state of these people while they are channeling messages. Any negative emotion considerably impairs their vibrations index, and consequently, their channels can get connected to by the subtle level beings corresponding to these vibrations. It is emotional instability that is responsible for the fact that many people who initially channeled the higher powers messages in the course of time begin to communicate with astral beings of different levels up till the lower one. And the fifth type is universal telepathic communication that contains energy, emotion and information components. This type of communication is characteristic of people of subtle perception who are at the vibration frequency of at least the fourth dimension and capable of interacting in a telepathic way both with other people and the light forces. Communication of this type supposes a unipolar energy component typical of higher dimensions and, consequently, excluding dual world thoughts and emotions penetration into the channel. The messages from the forces of light can be channeled through a person who can maintain the vibration level corresponding to them and possesses emotion and mentality and unipolar world perception. Today I would like to finish the series of my messages on telepathic communication. As you have probably understood, you do not have to wait for the moment when you move into the fifth dimension. You can start practicing it right now. But to make this new type of communication an integral part of your life, the following conditions are required. First, purity of your conscience. Only having freed itself from all the negative and alien programs, it will be able to take in other person thoughts and emotions of similar vibrations. While being overwhelmed by the dual world, it is usually too obstructed and dense, which causes energy chaos of low vibration thoughts and emotions in it. Second, living at the moment of here and now. It is this state that transmits one into higher dimensions, the fourth and even the fifth one with a different space-time reality, enabling people to exchange information freely over any distance and within any time limits. Third, ability to tune on to another person's vibrations. It can be achieved only when your fields resonate with each other in terms of all the three components: energy, emotion and information, with no distortions in favor of this or that component. Fourth, ability to switch off one mind giving way to soul. It is this that is likely to be the most difficult for you right now, since mind has got used to providing you with information all the time, hunting for it in your conscience and subconscious. It juggles it so skillfully, creating logical chains and considerations that by its prompts it simply deprives you of the opportunity to receive pure undistorted information from another person. Fifth, emotional non-involvement into the process of receiving information. Finding oneself in the dual world, it is rather difficult to do because you have got so used to imparting emotional coloring to all your thoughts and actions. And so as to reach complete estrangement, you should at least plunge into the altered state of mind. Sixth, ability to decode the information received. What is at issue here is not to slant it in favor of your expectations, but to receive it pure, precisely getting the sense it conveys. And seventh, ability to maintain the channel for the whole session of communication. In other words, you should feel the moment when the information communicated ceases and the channel closes by itself. Only practice can help you achieve this. When you move into the space of the fifth dimension, all these skills will gradually acquire the usual automatic mode. Yet, now too you can start practicing this new type of communication step by step, mastering all its twists and turns. Today I would like to start a new topic that we will call human psyche characteristics, and we will consider it from the height of your new conscience this time, though sometimes you will have to rely on the experience you got in the dual world, since in this incarnation you have no experience of living in the unipolar world. And this is what I mean. So as to master the principles of existence in the reality new to you, and having tuned your thoughts, emotions and actions onto it, you should have a supporting point that will enable you to get a better idea of how huge the gap is between the two types of mentality, dual and unipolar one. So far your supporting point like this is your third dimension world experience, while the space of the fifth dimension for many still remains a dream. To make this dream come true, some specific steps are required, both at the energy level and at the physical one. You have already been given a lot of meditations, practices and just everyday tips on how to follow this direction, but, as you see, life holds a lot of surprises and obstacles for you on this way. And it is especially true now when each of you has to make your choice, to remain a free person enjoying the right to dispose of one life, or to become a slave allowing world puppeteers to seize control over your conscience and physical body. As you see, everything happened very quickly and unexpectedly for you. And while the preparatory period for the transition of Earth and humanity into a new reality lasted for decades, recently a sudden change has taken place and earth-shaking events have been pressed into several months. Many of you turned out to be unprepared for this, though in words urged events and complained of the things developing inexcusably slowly. Yet, this tardiness was good for you, because human psyche is quite a fragile substance and any sharp drops or shocks can be pernicious to it. But now, my dear, it becomes impossible to put off the supreme moment of transition, and there are many reasons for that. The main of them is that the energy gap between Earth and humanity vibrations becomes critical, and, consequently, it is necessary to pull up people vibrations to those of Earth as promptly as possible so that the former could make transition with their planet. To implement this, a global shock was required, and it affected every single person life. It is under such critical circumstances that human psyche either breaks or, on the contrary, gets strengthened and it advances to a new phase of its development. And right now each of you undergoes the durability test like this. You are having an exam in theory and practice of spiritual knowledge. I see that many of you are doing in an appropriate manner and are getting more and more convinced that energy shield and keeping self-respect can work miracles. And this time it is not blind faith of yours but drilled and field-tested spiritual skills, which is the first step to victory and getting rid of fear that has been instilled into your conscience and subconscious from century to century. So now, it is essential to consolidate this victory, and in my next messages I will tell you how you can do this. Today we will talk about what human psyche is in a broad meaning of this word. The word psyche itself derives from the Greek word soul, and of course, it is not incidental. It was soul that guided all the thoughts, emotions and actions of people in the early days of humanity when they were closely connected with the Creator. Yet, as they were gradually descending to the world of the third dimension, this connection was becoming poorer and poorer. They encountered the conditions where quite different needs came into picture, and they had to live not according to the laws of the universe but the ones that had artificially been introduced into human society by the dragon race. So as to survive in the dual world new to them, they had to break their psyche, adjusting it to the new living conditions. It is sure to happen unintentionally, because getting incarnated on Earth over and over again, one came here with the memory of one former greatness deleted, and with every incarnation that followed this memory grew more and more erased, while new reptiloid programs were instilled into human subconscious, this time featuring total submission to authorities. An essential role was played here by religion and the laws and customs imposed by it for human personality suppression both in society and in family. Thereby, human soul was gradually cornered and debarred from voting. People ceased hearing it since their vibrations decreased to the extent they could take in only the things imposed from without. Thus, having lost connection with soul, they lost connection with God too, who was turned by religion into supreme judge that people worshipped and were scared of because they had forgotten they themselves were his particles and, consequently, human gods. The dragons were perfectly aware of the fact that cutting down this string, the energy channel connecting one with one higher aspects, they would be able to get total control over people. And as you see, they have really succeeded in this, having perverted human psyche to the point when it has turned into amorphous substance that this time was easily guided. Indeed, hordes of astral beings have been working for reptiloids for millennia of their supremacy on Earth, forming human psyche in the way to make it readily respond to emotional and mental impulses of the masters of the world. Little by little, human subtle bodies have become compressed to the utmost, while only lower chakras responsible for survival of humans in the third dimension world remained as their subtle sense organs. Their upper chakras and pineal gland have fallen lethargically asleep for a long time, being unable to function in low vibrations like this. Yet, it is them that once used to be divine bases of human psyche. As you see, my dear, to give a clear definition of the notion of psyche, I had to make this short excursus into past. Well, to cut a long story short, human psyche is a combination of their two facets, spiritual and earthly material. And depending on what is prevailing in a person at this moment, their psyche can be balanced, of high vibrations, divine, unipolar, or, on the contrary, unstable, of low vibrations, down to earth, dual. Well, let us go on talking about what human psyche is. And now we will focus on its spiritual facet, the one that they have been trying to stifle for many centuries, and the one that now, with the arrival of new energies, is trying to awake from its lethargic sleep. Generally speaking, human psyche is always dependent on the state of their soul that determines the properties and peculiarities of the former. You see, here soul comes into picture again. In spite of all the attempts to stamp it out of people, it still goes on showing in your language as a reminder of your divine origin. And even such expressions as a lovely old soul or a soulless creature convey sacred meaning, pointing out that not everybody embodied as human has a divine soul. Thus, human psyche is the reflection of their inner world and the indicator of their belonging to this or that category of living beings embodied as humans. Let us try to look into the expression psychic health and psychically deficient person. There is a fine distinction drawn between them, since in the third dimension world, psychic health is often determined by the degree of obedience and compliance with common standards of behavior. So, one with conscience going beyond the established limits of mentality and behavior is often referred to as psychically deficient or insane. As a rule, the one is condemned in every possible way, scoffed at, and can even be put in mental hospital so as to confine one from the others obedient and normal people. This person becomes dangerous for the society of the third dimension world, for it is hard to control them. Their psyche is getting predominated by spiritual facet this time. Their spirit, with fear being untypical of it, is coming to the fore, and it is the core of human soul. As you see, my dear, despite all reptiloids' attempts, they have not managed to erase such divine notions as spirit and soul either from your language or from your conscience. They have always been in your life and at the subconscious level have been influencing your psyche, preventing it from total destruction. It is often the case that in a person possessing an ancient pure soul, there is always in progress unceasing struggle between their dark side, supported by the third dimension world, and the light one that lives in them as genetic memory of their divine origin. That is why their psyche becomes unstable. Too many external factors get involved into the struggle. Among these are the people who surround them, living conditions, and various life circumstances. They shake human psyche, and they now rise up to heavens like on the swings, now come back to earth, now reach peace of mind, now being torn by passions get down to the very bottom. And it goes on like this until one gains power of spirit, which will make their psyche state sound and will advance them to the level of resonance with their soul that this time will not let them fall down and will guide their life, activating their divine sense organs and restoring connection with their higher aspects. Today we will go on talking about what person can be regarded as psychically sound or deficient, keeping in mind their psychic health. Of course, my previous message said that in modern society the term psychically deficient is often applied to any person who does not comply with the confines of the existing value system, since they have their own opinion and do not follow the mentality and behavior stereotypes being imposed on them. Yet, I would like to remind you, my dear, we are dwelling on the spiritual component of human psyche, not its social aspect when one is driven by the desire for self-assertion and getting up the social ladder oneself. Here what is at issue is the inner protest when soul does not accept the things taking place in the world, feeling the dual world being artificial and deceitful. But in this case, too, human psyche can fall if, for example, their inner protest acquires emotion coloring of negative character. In case of some people, the feeling of existing reality being unjust grows into obsession. Yet, as you know, any emotion distortions result in one vibration's sharp decrease and, consequently, one becomes susceptible to astral beings of all kinds. And then it is them who start controlling one's psyche. Thus, trying to rid themselves of slavish psychology and their personality suppression, people find themselves in another kind of slavery in the world of astral beings who feed on the energies of irritation, anger, discontent, censure, aggression and many other negative emotions. Sometimes the heat of one inner protest reaches the highest point and rears hordes of astral beings indeed, and some of them, most faithful to a person, become their infiltrated lodgers who can be very hard to get rid of. And here any psychic health is out of question. Thus, out of the best and most sincere intentions, one who opposed the system falls victim to the dark forces. This is exactly the reason, my dear, why over and over again I appeal you to remember that everything happening in your life should be taken calmly and wisely, without any censure or aggression, as another lesson enabling you to rise to a new step of your spiritual development. And if you manage to stay calm even in the most absurd and unexpected for you and your country situation, you will be able to find the right and wise solution, allowing you to live through it as a winner, not a loser. Today I would like to focus on the way surrounding reality influences your psyche, and we will study subtle energy mechanisms of this interaction. As I have already told you, as long as man was descending to the third dimension world, their soul core, their spirit was getting weaker and weaker. And this is the reason why human psyche has lost its harmony and equilibrium. While the spiritual and earthly facets of man used to be balanced and naturally complementary, now the odds are in favor of their earthly physical component, and their psychic state is now mostly dependent on their living conditions. When one is good at heart, has peace of mind and is really happy, one's psyche acquires harmony and equilibrium, becomes well balanced. There are moments like this in every person's life, and they help them remember what they used to be like and feel that such state is possible to achieve, as if life itself shows them what to strive for. Yet, when one has an unlucky streak and finds oneself in the whirlpool of negative energies, one's psyche loses its balance, becoming vulnerable and susceptible to alien influence. And this is what happens at the subtle level in both the cases. When one reaches the state of psychic equilibrium, one is within high vibration energies, which enables one's soul to revive, and then it gets at the helm of one's psyche. While when one gets plunged into the low vibration energies of the third dimension world, one's soul cannot get through to one and falls lethargically asleep again. This is, my dear, exactly where the expression peaceful soul, well-balanced psyche comes from, since the word psyche itself is a synonym of the word soul. What conclusion can we draw? So as to get stable psyche and sustain harmony in soul, you should learn to control energy flows you generate both inwards your energy space into the outer world. Well, as a follow-up to my previous message, I would like to give you some details on what energy flows are. A human being is such a complex and many-sided creature that they can create both inside and outside themselves a world of their own, with its versatility sometimes making it heterogeneous in terms of vibrations. And this is how it happens. Since your restless mind is constantly in search of food, it starts dreaming and making up various scenarios of your life, getting the characters from your environment it knows joined in. But people, as a rule, feature different vibrations, and sometimes this gap can be really sizable. Yet, your mind does not take this into consideration and has imaginary discussion with every person from your environment. It can be both a monologue and a dialogue. It plays through all the cases of scenario possible, indispensably making its judgment. It compares, proves, analyses, dreams, that is, it is constantly in motion. This is the reason why it is so hard for one to achieve the state of your now, which is the only one that can make one's psyche balanced and help one gain peace of mind. Well, just imagine how many energy flows one generates every minute because of such unceasing mental process. And since one thoughts often rush from one person to another, these flows get intermingled, thereby creating incredible chaos in one energy space. So, how can you harmonize these flows? My dear, the first thing you should do is to learn to trace all your thoughts and realize whether you really want to create an energy bridge with this or that person. You should be well aware that any thought about somebody is an energy connection already, and if you are constantly thinking about somebody, it is energy captivity now. This is how, for example, offenses loom large in case of people who cannot forgive. Continuous generating of one and the same negative emotion can break human psyche, since they are now unable to control their energy flows and give the reins of government to astral beings who in this particular case nourish on the energy of offense. This is how soul abduction arises, which is most often caused by offense, jealousy, envy, hatred, censure and other low vibration energies. And very often these emotions accompany each other, creating the whole whirlpool of energy flows inside a person that now do not have sufficient room in the person's subtle bodies and energy space, so they rush outwards, catching up with the offender and start ruining their subtle bodies now and polluting their energy space. This is how energy attacks are made. But always remember that their destructive action is directed, first of all, towards the one who initiated them and then to the one they are aimed at. This is the mechanism of energy flows passing, and this is the crux of the law of the universe: like attracts like. You get what you gave rise to. Well, today we move on to the practical part, how you can learn to control energy flows for your own sake, for the sake of Earth and people around you. First thing you should remember, any thought form of yours conveys this or that energy, and depending on the quality of this energy you introduce into the world, either destructive or constructive energy flow. Of course, there are neutral, merely practical everyday thought forms, but in this case we are talking about those featuring emotional coloring. It is your emotions that become the point of attraction of the corresponding energies that get more and more concentrated in your subtle bodies. As long as one is thinking over this or that situation or a problem, they gradually create energy flows, bridges between you and the people you think about, and becoming filled with their energy, now they get even more concentrated. In practice it is impossible to trace each of these flows, therefore you should concentrate all your attention on the trigger of your conscience being set on the mode of love, approval and gratitude. Thereby you will save yourself and the world around from negative energies intervention. But now there has also come a crucial moment on Earth when man has to win over not only their freedom but also the right for existence. So, what should you do under these circumstances so as to protect yourself and at the same time not to get involved into the confrontation with authorities, which inevitably will result in negative energy consequences? And it is here where your skill of energy flows redistribution for the greater good of all will be of use. Let us make an example as follows. You feel that the protest is getting enhanced in you against those who have imposed the absurd situation of the quarantine on you, who make people use masks that can only do them harm, who have restricted your freedom of travel and deprived of the opportunity to meet friends and relatives, who have deprived you of job and, consequently, your source of income. We can go with the list on and on, since the situation on Earth gives rise to many negative consequences for each of you. Well, now, let us consider two options of attitude towards the situation. First, you are constantly thinking of it and discussing all the current events with your acquaintances in a negative vein only. With every single day the energy flows initiated by you both in your own energy field and by means of the bridges created by you in the energy space of your acquaintances get imbued with the energies of hatred, aggression, annoyance, fear or powerlessness to change anything. So, these tiny brooks of negative energies originated by your thoughts gradually turn into wide rivers, flooding everything on the way. Do you think it will encourage the situation outcome turning out for the greater good of all? I think this is a rhetorical question. And the other option, in spite of all the things happening, you understand that it is possible to dissolve this nightmare that came into your life only with the help of the energy of unconditional love. And you trace each censure or judgment thought of yours concerning the current situation before it gets embodied in flesh and melt into love and light. Then you introduce quite different energy flows into the world, full flowing rivers of unconditional love that will wash away all the energy dirt on their way that has accumulated in human subtle bodies and all over your long-suffering Earth. Now I would like to tell you about one more feature of energy flows. This time we will dwell on those of them that originate outside Earth. Unique time has come on your planet when it is showered, like with a star rain, with high vibration energy flows from the depth of space and from the light forces tutoring Earth. And in this case there occurs double grounding now. The pure energy of unconditional love getting into the energy space of ascended masters, angels, archangels and highly developed extraterrestrial civilizations representatives becomes adapted to their energies first and then arrives at Earth. This is exactly the reason why a huge army of light forces is present now in the near-Earth space. Besides following all the events taking place on Earth at present, they are also some kind of energy filters securing you from overdosing with high vibration energies that your conscience and your bodies are not ready for yet. Those of you who work with energies on a regular basis know how widely your reaction on them can vary, and that sometimes your physical and psychic state prevents you from taking in some particular kind of energy. It can be accounted for by anything: troubles in your life, not feeling quite well, magnetic storms and sharp weather changes. Your vibrations are unstable so far, therefore your heavenly patrons regulate energy flows that each of you receives all the time. Do not be surprised. Each of you is being guided personally and in a masterly way indeed, and it is explained by the fact that every revived person on Earth is invaluable, since they can revive thousands of others simply sustaining high vibration energy flows within themselves. For it is them who are the last link in the chain of grounding and distribution of unconditional love energy, with the concentration of the latter increasing more and more every single day. You are, my dear, some kind of energy dispensers on Earth, because the people around you most often cannot take in the energies of too high vibrations, and they take them from you in the amount they are able to assimilate right now. All this happens unconscious both for you and them, yet the process of energy interchange does not lose its value because of this. This is the long road that divine energy flows travel through subtle material beings and high vibration bodies of your galaxy brothers. They arrive at Earth, and here in accordance with vibrations they are attracted to the people who are ready to become the next link in this energy delivery to other people able to assimilate it. There is an energy chain reaction, with each of you taking part in it, and this is also how your unity with the universe and all its inhabitants shows. Today we will dwell on how your psyche is influenced by these or those kinds of energy flows. So as to help you get a better idea of this interaction mechanism, imagine your psyche being an energy vessel or mini egregor of any shape you like. This vessel is hardly ever empty, since one has lived in society from childhood and inevitably contacts quite a large number of people. The psyche vessel of each of you has different energy contents, in terms of both quantity and quality. There are calm and phlegmatic people, noisy and active ones, while there are those who are warm-hearted and indifferent, kind and mean, generous and greedy, and so on and so forth. These features are related to the quality of energies, and its quantity depends on life circumstances and situations. Thus, for example, a very active person overwhelmed by passions finding themselves in high vibration space can behave in a quiet and peaceful manner, and the other way round. An even-tempered person can fly off the handle facing the case of emergency. All this happens owing to the fact that this energy vessel walls are easily penetrable for energy both inwards and outwards. It is this continuous energy circulation process that human psyche consists of, and in its turn it influences one physical condition. It is exactly this interaction of psyche and body that laid the foundation of psychosomatics, which is the Greek for soul and body. As you see, my dear, your health is totally dependent on your psyche, on its quantitative and qualitative component. Any psyche failure can turn into this or that indisposition, and sometimes even a serious disorder. We have already talked a lot about the fact that when you finally move into the space of the fifth dimension, your body will not become ill anymore. And the simple reason for that to happen is that in the unipolar world your energy vessels will be filled with homogeneous energy of unconditional love that by nature cannot transform into low vibration energy typical of the dual world. Under these living conditions, new to you energy flows will calmly and smoothly overflow from one vessel into another, when introducing into each of them new colors, shades and nuances, thereby enriching the energy profile of the person you are interacting with, your individual traits and personal experience. It can be compared with beautiful harmonious choir singing, with each voice performing its part and setting off another voice originality. These are, my dear, the different manners that energy flows can act, being generated by people in the worlds of different vibrations. And the higher your vibrations, the more balanced and peaceful your psyche is, gradually moving from the third dimension space into that of the fifth dimension. This is what your conscience revival means: advancement of your psyche to a new spiritual level. Well, our talk about the notion of human psyche is coming up to an end, and today I would like to draw some conclusions to it. I think you have already understood that psyche is, generally speaking, human soul exposed to the third dimension world conditions. And it is the way it acts shows itself that your harmony in soul depends on. And it is not incidental that both the words have the same root in different languages though. Spiritual growth of a person also depends on the extent of their soul revival and its ability to guide person life. Psychic health is but harmonious interaction of soul divine part of humans and their ego earthly survival tool in the third dimension world. To reach the balance of the two components is a great skill. Any distortions in terms of this or that component result in psyche failure and, consequently, in physical diseases. All the negative energies both generated by oneself and arriving at one energy space from without cause the chain reaction of negative thoughts and emotions that are controlled by human ego. And such low vibration energy flows circulation prevents soul from showing itself and prompting one the right way out. This way the ego-related distortion occurs, and one psyche becomes shattered, falls out of the balanced condition. Yet, it can be just the opposite case. For example, when one does not accept the existing reality, finding it too hard to bear, unjust, oppressive, one retreats into one imaginary world, artificially avoiding problems and hardships. One can take up self-perfection doing spiritual practices, making one home far from other people and becoming a solitary. One soul is happy with such transformation but is sad at the same time, too, because this person deprives it of the opportunity to gain invaluable experience of life in the dual world. Such person's psyche becomes balanced since they have escaped all social irritants and negative energies accompanying their life in the world. Yet, in this case there is a distortion, too soul-related this time though, and in spite of the fact it exists in the energies of high vibrations, it gets bored without work it has embodied on earth for. So, what should be done so as to gain psychic health, keeping the balance of soul and ego? Before all, one should realize what one has come to this world for, try to understand what one mission, life predestination is, and then ask your soul to guide you this direction. But to make it possible for it to do so, you should learn to maintain yourself at its vibration frequency, which means living in accordance with the laws of the universe. And if you manage to live in high vibration energies, not only soul but your ego as well will become your faithful assistants, helping you find your way in the third dimension world and, consequently, fulfill your mission the best possible manner. Thus, balanced and concordant interaction between your divine and earthly facets will bring you psychic health and harmony in soul. Today we will talk about the impact human psyche makes on one's ability to communicate in a telepathic way. Why are some people quick to take it up, while others with the best will in the world are unable to make practical use of it even under the most favorable circumstances? The thing is that it isn't possible to develop telepathic communication ability by persistent practice or special exercises. This ability can show itself in one only when one conscience advances to a new stage of spiritual development, having completely freed from the burden of the third dimension world. In this case, when vibrations increase to the extent that one energy field gets rarefied and easily lets through energy information flows of another person, and their psyche takes an active part in this since it is their soul part, and it is possible to call it its indicator in the world one finds oneself in right now. If it is the world of the fifth dimension, they are at one and the same wave, being completely concordant with each other. While if it is the world of the third or fourth dimensions, human psyche is still susceptible to the energies of rather low vibrations, and therefore it has to overcome obstacles on the way to harmonization of its relationships with soul. Having learned to control one's psyche and energy flow circulating around, you will be able to preserve harmony in soul that is a prerequisite for telepathic communication. In other words, there are 2 points required for favorable telepathic communication: energy background. First, one uniting with soul as a higher aspect of existence. And second, well-balanced psyche got beyond the limits of the third dimension world. What happens next? Between two people there is settled high vibration energy contact channel that low vibration energies cannot get in, and, consequently, the information conveyed will not be misinterpreted and will reach the addressee as pure. And while in the unipolar world this channel will be sustained since external factors are as favorable as the inner condition of a person, in the third dimension world the guarantee of such channel purity is human well-balanced psyche able to remain peaceful in any situation and not to respond to negative external irritants. Coming back to the issue of telepathic communication, I would like to tell you about one more peculiarity of it. As a matter of fact, Telepathic communication is a talk of two souls. And now I will explain to you in what way it differs from the talk of two people. Words always convey earthly physical component because they were created exactly as communication tool in the worlds of low vibrations. Even the nicest and right words inevitably acquire individual shade of the person they are uttered by. They are imbued with their thoughts, emotions, life experience gained in the dual world, originality of their worldview and interpretation of essence of things. The same happens to the one they are addressed to, and they consider them in accordance with their life attitude and from their level of spiritual development. This is the reason why people often do not understand each other talking about the things that seem so easy. The things that are obvious and experienced long ago for one person can turn out a revelation of knowledge new and unusual for another one. Thus, after listening to one and the same lecture or watching one and the same film, people often have absolutely different impressions and make conclusions sometimes contradicting each other. And it happens because each of the people is at their own level of development and is learning their own life lessons. Therefore, from everything heard and seen one derives only the things one conscience is ready for. This is how the law of attraction works, and this is the reason why it can be so hard for you to convince somebody of the things that are already obvious to you. If this person's vibrations are still low enough, with the best will in the world they will not be able to assimilate new knowledge getting beyond the bounds of the dual world, and their reaction can be rather inadequate, from irritation and mockery to anger and aggression. Well, what happens during telepathic communication when people talk in terms of souls? Human soul can never descend to low worlds. It can just help one ascend to its level if one hears it. That is why two people having advanced to the level of their souls get to the unipolar space now where they can easily and naturally exchange thoughts and emotions. They send each other as energy information units. Each of them decodes them according to their individual traits, too, but at a different divine level of conscience with no touch of duality. Besides, a great advantage of telepathic communication is that you can understand a representative of any nation not even knowing the language of their country, as well as representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations, for in this case you scan their intention conveying message and energy component. For the time being it is a little complicated for you to understand since you are used to expressing everything in words, but the time will come when this knowledge will make your everyday practice a natural means of communication. Today we will move on to the next topic and will talk about a new principle of communication between humans on the earth of the fifth dimension. And what will be at issue is not telepathic communication but the way people will exchange experience, cooperate in different spheres, teach children, in a word, your everyday life in new conditions. But first, let us look into the main differences between human life in the third dimension and the fifth one. As we have repeatedly said, in the dual world based on comparison of oneself with other people, one always has to self-assert and prove to oneself and everybody around that one is with the best. And everyone does it according to one's abilities and moral principles. Somebody does it at others' expense, while some others achieve everything by fair means and hard work. But in the former and the latter case people have the same aim, to meet certain social standards and even to exceed them. As a rule, their aims are purely of material nature, but even if it is the case of creative work or spiritual sphere of their life, they are often guided by their pride and desire to stand out of the crowd, too. Thus, in the dual world one endowed with some talents consider them as a means to become rich and famous. And there are exceptionally rare cases of disinterested people who create for the sake of their soul, not thinking about whether their occupation will make a profit or bring fame. Sometimes they die in misery while fame comes to them after death. Yet, it is these people who are a prototype of higher dimensions creatures, since even finding themselves in the merciless third dimension world they managed to hear their soul and fulfill the mission they were born for. They did not compromise, which their ego was likely to impose on them, making them do the things they did not accept but that could have brought them money and fame. They preferred the freedom of expression in all its manifestations, and imagined that only people like this will inhabit the space of the fifth dimension, since others will simply be unable to get there because of the low level of their conscience. By definition, on the new earth there cannot be any opportunists, time servers, careerists, employers or employees. There will live creators in big and small who will do their work with love, not looking around at other people and not comparing themselves with anybody else. Envy will be taken over by joy shared with one neighbor. Greed will be taken over by desire to share the best things with one neighbor. The desire to stand out will be taken over by the feeling of unity with every living being on earth. The desire to rule will be taken over by the feeling of love and sympathy. Thereby, the high vibration space of the fifth dimension will be dissolving all the remaining negative feelings and emotions instilled into human conscience and transforming them into the energy of unconditional love. It is this love that will lay the foundation of human communication and will become the unceasing source of inspiration for them. But already now, my dear, you can start living being mainly guided by these principles, which will enable you to switch over to new forms of communication naturally and easily. And I bless you for this. Loving you endlessly, Father Absolute spoke to you.